For the lead-in, let me point out that there is a great approach that life takes to human existence, which amounts to a supreme, a delightful, a supreme topographical gumbo of misdirection, misnomers, misspeak, and the ever-popular outright deceit. Human consciousness has been allowed to, has been made to smell around the edges of this, as witnessed by the inside of religions and philosophies and just old sore-head existence in the city of people throughout history, believing in such stories, coming up with such stories as the gods trying to get even with man, or life being some sort of trial and tribulation, that this whole thing being, in essence, a bad joke. But it is not quite that simple once you begin to see it. What a terrible figure of speech. It's not that. I shouldn't say it's not that simple. It's just not that. We'll get into whether it's more simple or more complex later, but it's not that. Very quickly, although there is no such thing as a perfect parallel, etc., etc. Remember, you heard it here first. And so when I do it, even though there is no such thing, the very existence of life, whatever it's doing, tells the alert, the perceptive, those who can hear and see, it always tells them something other than the noise and the sights the rest of you hear. Thusly, although it's not perfect, do you understand that there is, in a quite real sense, flawed as the parallel is, but in a quite real sense, throughout all of creation that you can ordinarily perceive, of which you can be conscious, there is this kind of misdirection and deceit going on, to wit. What if the other creatures on this planet had anything resembling consciousness? Then, what would it do to the normal so-called food chain, the transfer of energies? Would the gazelles ever go down to the water hole, knowing from past experience and from them passing the word around that the chances are, by then they would have statistics after all these years of the chances of this one water hole, it's the only one within 50 square miles, that there are tigers laying out there in the grass. If they don't get you today, they're probably going to get you later. So there you'd be. How many gazelles would thirst to death? Or upset the whole system. Begin to think, well, hey, let's move somewhere else. Why don't we all get together and move to Europe where there are no tigers? And all the gazelles pack their little bags and they try to leave Africa. In a sense, there is, it's flawed, but there is some validity to it, or I wouldn't bring it up. If it exists, there's some validity to it, and that exists. Gazelles get eaten. Everybody gets eaten. Everybody eats something. Everybody is subject to attack. They're in the waiting queue of slaughter, but then there seems to be, at the conscious level, there seems to be the ability to forestall it. If there wasn't, there wouldn't be this wonderful hobby, one of the great misdirections that life has given man, that great hobby of you know what? My health! Who the hell would care about their health? You're going to die anyway. What are you going to do, die healthy? Die sick. That is a kind of ultimate misdirection. But do you understand that in the normal transfer of energies, there are certain things, I'm just going to put it to you this way, but you who begin to be able to hear, you can hear between the cracks here. There are certain things that those involved with transferring energy cannot be allowed to know. The way things are structured now. They simply cannot, or the gazelles would never go down the water hole. A lot of them would die of thirst. They would not get out. They'd be afraid to turn their back. Gazelles, they might cut down on the procreation of gazelles. If they had this knowledge that tigers are everywhere, and we are tigers, Big Macs. You know how much gazelle screwing would go on. Being a male, I can tell you it interferes some if you're constantly looking over your shoulder for a tiger to come into place. It interferes. It could cut down the gazelle population. It could do all sorts of things. So there has to be a kind of, in this case, of course, gazelles do not have anything resembling human consciousness. They do not have abstract memory, and they do not relate abstract memory food to one another. I know all that. But do you see that they could not be allowed, the way things are arranged now, to have that kind of knowledge? So I can call it misdirection, I can call it misnaming, I can call it outright deceit, but it's all words covering this same area. This is going on in life. People laugh, has let the information kind of seep out, as I said, which is right at the heart of all the negative aspects of all religions, which if you know any other aspects, you may write them down and send them to me next year. But that is right at the heart of it, that religions attempting, when they get philosophical, attempting to explain why we're in this hell of a mess, which of course everybody but a few people down this mutant strain, everybody else believes we're in a hell of a mess. The people that know better, we know we're just in a hell of a. Just a joke, just a joke. But things are not as they appear. And yet people suspect, their nervous systems, their very genes and cells tingle, vibrate, like a little Twilight or an Alfred Hitchcock movie, that something spooky is going on. They don't know what, and so they call it gods and demons and cosmic forces and hells and paradises and subconsciousness. It is a great topological deceit, but for a very good reason. That if people actually knew what was going on, if gazelles actually knew what was going on, if tigers actually knew what was going on, nobody, including tigers, mountains, the shifting plates of this planet, if they knew exactly what was going on, if the state of California knew what was going on, it would move probably. You know? As inconvenient as that may be to the people in Pennsylvania. But if everybody in some three-dimensional way that I'm trying to describe or hint at in words, if everybody actually, quote, knew what was going on, you do see that things that are going on as they are, and as I've told you, assume for a second that I am absolutely correct, that things as they are things as they should be. So if everybody knew exactly what was going on, fully knew what was going on, then things as they are would no longer go on as they are. That's the point you should be able to get some glimpse of, is you could not, over a wide range, all the way from elephants to gazelles, to the shifting plates, to human nature, to humans, could not have a full knowledge of what's going on, or the things that are going on now would no longer go on as they are going on. The energy transfer, all of the exchanges, all the dances would very quickly be interfered with to the point that things as they are now would cease. And after a little bit, a short period of time, you would not recognize this planet. Part of this deceit, misdirection, misnoming, etc., is in the kind of areas I've talked about recently, and I was getting into some more tonight. These structures, these organic, crystalline almost structures that grow up and they're invisible anytime you've got two cellular entities, two bodies, two groups of bodies, two nations, two ideas. Ordinary consciousness cannot see it, but it grows organically. And just as in crystals, and I don't mean this kind of New Age shit, I'm talking about in the actual crystalline growths in nature from certain views. Crystals are apparently inorganic. Now, I know technically better, but if you just glance and all your senses look upon a crystal for as long as you care to fool with it, it's almost as though dirt is growing. That dirt got in some configuration and you're not sure how, that it's not actually alive, but it is alive. And there are these kind of structures that grow in the same way between any two cellular bodies, planets, two ideas, etc. So the structures, the frontiers I've spoken about, the contours that go on, the relationships, it is to keep everybody, and especially man, in line, literally and figuratively. All right. In every relationship between two cellular bodies, two living entities on this level, on this planet, two individuals, friendship, almost two strangers passing in the night, business acquaintances, then two larger groups of cellular bodies, two organizations, the Republicans and the Democrats, the Royalists and the Revolutionists, one family, a generation of one family, and then the next generation of that same family, two so-called nations, two so-called races, two hemispheres, two philosophical ideas, two theoretical ideas in the world of art. If you've got two entities, there grows immediately As long as anybody involved with it. And my verbal descriptions will run to infinity if I go any further with this. As long as those involved with it, or as long as they don't even know and somebody observing it realizes there's a relationship, then, as soon as it's been established, there is a kind of crystalline structure immediately begins to grow. It does. You just can't see it. You know it. People talk about it. They call it emotions, attitude, opinion, all kinds of things. But it actually grows. There is no such thing as nothing. Emotions are not nothing. Emotions are not invisible. Attitudes are not invisible. You just can't see them. They're not from some black hole. They're not something that just sweeps through human life as though it were a wind, and then human consciousness believe, hey, the wind is nothing. Really? Don't tell that to people sitting in front of a hurricane down on the Gulf Coast. The structure grows. It is an organic necessity. Now, what I started touching on last time we were here is what I want to try and point you toward specifically. Between two cellular bodies, let's say two humans to start with, and then including everything I just mentioned. In every structure, there is a feeding of one of the structures at the expense of the other. Always. Or there would be no structure. Lions and gazelles would not have a structure. They would not have a relationship unless one was going to feed off of the other. In this case, literally, or easily seen. If there are two, now not tigers and gazelles, humans, all the way from that to two nations, two philosophies, two generations of the same blood family. If there is a relationship, there is a structure, and the structure's purpose is to feed one of the cellular bodies at the expense of the other, which shouldn't come as any surprise. And it always goes in one direction. It always goes upward. Now, upward, of course, is a 3D measurement, and I mean much more than that. And I can say use 4 or 5 synonyms here, and none of them are exactly it. The submissive is going to feed the dominant. The weaker is going to feed the more powerful. The more complex will eat off of the more simplistic. The higher, and now in the sense of me describing the kind of at least three-dimensional describable progression of the human circuitry, from the lower, older circuits, grosser, baser, less verbal ones, all the way to the newer, apparent, man's great mind. In any relationship, the purpose is for one of the entities in the structure. Is they're transferring energies, but it's for one of them to get the best of the bargain. There is no such thing of any consequence as an even trade. An even trade is the kind of thing I mentioned that could be this. Excuse me, buddy, you know what time it is? Yeah, 2 o'clock, thanks. And that's not literally, but insofar as to give you some kind of breathing room up here, for me to say almost, is that's almost an even exchange. Almost. Anything any more complex than that is to move energy. And it may not, certainly to ordinary consciousness, seem as dramatic, as immediate as a lion jumping on a gazelle and having it for supper, or a king calling up some peasant and say, hey you, I heard you didn't pay your taxes, kill him. Now between those kind of extremes is what is going on continually between individuals and in that which seems to be organizations, institutions, large groups. The thing that is not recognized and is of importance is that the feeding process, the purpose, the benefit of the structure is for the benefit of the stronger, which is just, remember, is just one synonym, is one description, and it is by no means perfect or complete. It is seriously flawed. But it is always the higher that is eating at the expense of the lower, the more complex eating at the expense of the more simplistic. And once you begin to see it, It is that which at any particular time is that which is more necessary for life's health in that one little locale that may just be two people. It may be very short-lived, or it may be a relationship that goes on between these people over a period of many decades. But it is going to be the more necessary is going to be feeding at the less necessary. The exchange is not even. It is never even, except, as I said, to give you somewhere to start, those kind of almost little social pieces of intercourse that are come and gone before anybody seems to notice it. Other than that, there is a necessary transfer of energy, but it is not. It cannot be an even exchange. There is no such thing. If there was an even exchange, you would, for instance, if I must point this out, you would expend the same amount of caloric energy as you take in. How long could you live if you had no reserve? You would waste away. Those of you who worry about losing weight, that wouldn't be your concern anymore, because you could not eat fast enough. Things would be arranged that you realize, I am wasting away, I can't live, I can't hardly even pick up a fork. Then every time you'd say, well, I'm going to eat more. It would take the same amount, no matter how much you ate, it would increase that much amount that your body would have to burn up to eat that amount. There is no even exchange. None. Now, before I point out the area of what should be the obvious, how about a small apparent side trip? Because life really here is a grand example of life using a continuing, never seen, never suspected, hilarious forms of misdirection. And it apparently, I'll start out here because all of you will know the examples, you just never looked at it. Now I'm saying of these forms that life uses, that is in relationship to what I've just pointed out, that all structures, all relationships between two cellular bodies, whether they be individuals or large groups of people all the way from the powerful to the powerless, the structure is always for the benefit of the more powerful, the more complex, the more necessary. But life has this thing that goes on continually, that there are examples you're surrounded by, that by all city appearances or otherwise, are you ready? I don't know how far you care for me to go. I'll see how tired I get. You want me to name everything in the world? No. Not everything. No, no, no. How about, in our part of the world, a great one? It's in the news almost daily. It apparently takes up much of the thinking and the planning of our major metropolitan areas. Much money is spent on it. Continual discussion. Dire threats that if it's not seen to, civilization could begin to crack the infrastructure. I have in mind the wonderful world of rapid transit. And all of our, especially the Western world, it's just rapid transit. And what is their story? It's going on in Atlanta right now. And of course, you people in New York, you know all about that. L.A., all their continuing debates, and that nobody wants to take the buses, and they shouldn't even bother with putting anything besides the bus system. But what is the story of all rapid transit, whether it was built in New York and the subways back in the 1800s, or this newly finished rapid transit city in Atlanta? And Miami's been fooling with one for years and years, and they'll start it and they'll stop it, and they get 10 blocks away, and they all decide to hell with it. But then they come back and they raise taxes again. But what is always the story? Always the story. Always the story. Did he say always the story? Listen to me. The story is always this. Now listen, you've all heard this. The story is always this. Somebody will stand up, the mayor, or suddenly some guy that you really never heard of, that looks suspiciously well off, well tanned, well appointed, and it turns out he is the president of the Miami, the Los Angeles, the Atlanta City Forward Progress Committee. And you never heard of it, but there he stands, And apparently, once it starts, anytime he wants a press conference, the local stations are right there. The man says, and it's picked up everywhere, he says what? Without exception, as I was saying, he says this: the less fortunate of our people in this area have got to have this rapid transit to move around to where the jobs are. They have simply got to have it. The tacit part being that this man looks like, and of course the mayor chimes in, and the city council, they apparently are not in that category. They got limos, drivers, or at least they got cars. They don't have to worry about this. So it's certainly not for my benefit. It's for the powerless, the poor. All right, now this Ford, does that, nobody ever questions that. It's sure, because it's the poor people who do ride the subway, so it's their benefit. No, it's not. Now remember, you and your people, this is not an attack on society. This is not a psychological commentary or sociological. It's something else. I'm just taking that which is out in life as a starting point. They even say, life makes them say, it's for the benefit of the less privileged. And they're saying the powerless, the poor. They can't afford to drive cars. They can't afford to take a cab and all that. They've got to have some affordable transportation to get from one side of town over here where the jobs are. And it sounds, well, you know, God bless these people to be concerned about the poor. They got to have the people get over here to where their factories are and where their stuff is. And another one that's coeval with that is they're always talking about we've got to save the downtown structures. Atlanta's going to fall apart. L.A., well, of course, didn't have much of a downtown to actually start with, but all over the country, they're saying the inner city is going to fall apart if we don't have some kind of transportation. Now, their concern is not for the poor people to move through inner town. It's that the power structures, the powerful, their money originally was made, the basis of it back in the 1800s, all over the world. At one time, it was property, it was land. The downtown area in every city is owned by the powerful. And if everybody deserts it, rapid transit is just a great example. I'll give you another one. Does everybody hear any of this? It's got nothing to do with powerful people and subways. It's just irrelevant to somebody doing this other than the fact that life is screaming, laughing, and pointing. And this is just one of the best examples that we have in our lifetime because it all makes absolute sense. Nobody even questions. I mean, they'll question some of the people, say, the so-called middle class. Or even some of the poor people may say, well, Jesus, we do need a subway because the only job I got is across town, and I need something cheap to get over there because they don't pay, but 75 cents an hour and all the tar you can suck on. So I need something. I need rapid transit. I need it, and it all makes sense. It all makes sense, except rapid transit is not for the benefit of the powerless. The structures that grow up and the idea, if not the reality, of a rapid transit system in some area is a structure between the powerful and the powerless as always. But it never is for the benefit of the lesser group. It can't be. Things would die. The inner city wouldn't die. Life would begin to die. Humans would die. As I said, I don't believe I'll name everything that's ever existed. But I can give you a few that are right up to date. Another great one is consumer credit. In the Western world, they look at it, and nobody questions this. They look at it vis-a-vis the third world or the Eastern Bloc countries. You constantly hear on the news, boy, how much better off we are in America or France or Italy, England, than they are in Russia. Not only does an automobile cost 5 years' pay, you got to save it up. Ha! Over here, you hand them a credit card. You take out a loan. It is for the benefit of those. The Rockefellers don't need consumer credit, right? Anything they want, they pay for. It's for you poor people. Now, we don't mean that pejoratively speaking, but you people don't have for a new refrigerator. We know you working people having to ride MARTA. You don't have $700 for a new refrigerator, but that's all right. In the goodness of our powerful hearts, powerful but magnanimous hearts, we're going to come up with this idea of credit, which nobody ever heard of. Surely you people, I keep saying things like this, that surely you know something or remember a little bit about history. Consumer credit is a brand new thing, not credit among the powerful. They've always had that. If there was king of some temporary Saxon king would lend some Frank king enough money to go beat some other guy up. That's all another story. The powerful have their own form of exchange. But the idea of consumer credit is really new. And it is still, in parts of the world, considered civilized, such as the USSR. It's unknown. It was up until a few weeks ago. Because I heard somewhere out one ear that they're fooling around with a MasterCard for a few people. But at any rate, there is no consumer credit in some parts of the civilized world now. But in the places where it is, it was looked upon originally. And if you think about it now, me speaking the part for the powerful, that is the story that Life put out, that consumer credit is a boon to mankind. It's obviously a boon to the United States that you people could not afford. Most of you would not have refrigerators, say the Voice of Life through certain areas, if it were not for consumer credit, because you couldn't save up $700 at one time, much less a car, $15,000. But in the goodness of our little bankers' hearts, and us other people, we're going to let you go in debt and buy these things now. And it sounds beautiful until you realize it is not for the benefit of the consumer. And that is not to say that you don't benefit by having a refrigerator, because I guess some of you don't care for having ptomaine poison. So some of you may enjoy having a refrigerator to keep some of your food from spoiling. But the idea that, for instance, a consumer credit is for the benefit, that is in the exchange, and the structure between those who had the money and didn't need credit, and then decided, as the structure went, that this bridge, the structure between us, is we're going to let some of it flow down to you, we're going to let you borrow it at rates of interest. No, not exorbitant, just enough so that you don't ever have any money. And so it will fluctuate. Sometimes we'll charge you a little more, sometimes a little less, but just enough to where you'll die broke. And just enough to where you can barely pay off the refrigerator. Just enough that you will certainly always know in your little heart of hearts who's the powerful and who's the powerless. Another great one is unions, which is another fairly... is that suddenly, now of course I know that historically, and the unions seem to believe this, it's the way life works, that they had to fight, to band together against the powerful, the way they kicked us around and mistreated us. That we sort of wrenched a certain amount of power out of the hands of these greedy, erstwhile, all-powerful bastards. The unions are not for the benefit of the little people. I'm not going much further, except to remind you, well, there is one, well, there are a couple more. Maybe I should remind you people on the table, you new attendees, this is not an attack. I can't keep doing this forever, can I? Evidently. This is not an attack on life. There's nothing wrong with the Rockefellers. There's nothing wrong with MasterCard and Visa. They're just wonderful. Nothing wrong with, who else did I pick out? Nothing wrong with any of them. I just want you to see that you don't normally see. It's not right or wrong. This doesn't change anything. If you get upset by hearing this, you sure are easily upset. You belong back in the city. You should be delighted when you begin to actually hear, not just hear my words, but you begin to hear the, I said I'd stop, but there are a couple more I can't resist. One of them's the vote. To get away from apparent economics is politics. And it does fit. The freer you seem to be politically in the external world is where you find yourself in groups of people, other cellular bodies. You find them at the cutting edge of 3D observable life. The highest technology, the best health conditions, the longest lifespan. It's all where you apparently have the most freedom. I pointed that out before. But the idea of a vote, that in some way I am as powerful as the banker, as the Dodge family, some of the Mellons, that there's one man, one vote, and this is power in our hands. It seems to be true that you do seem to be on some equal footing with a billionaire, except for the fact that the powerful is moot how you vote. Always has been. But there is this beautiful illusion. Of course, in the city, it's a real illusion that it does matter. The other one I couldn't resist bringing up, back to economics, because this is so good. I guess I'll let it be the last one. The one I really, really personally enjoy, this new phenomenon, is that the banks, the lending institutions, have come up with a new way to help the little person, the home equity loan. That you people thought that you had pushed your MasterCard limit as far as it'd go, but now wait a minute. Don't you have some money that you've actually paid into that little house? And they go, yeah. And you go, well, we've got this new thing. God forbid nobody ever says anything more about second mortgage. That term, they sent it to the moon. It died with dinosaurs. They say, you've actually, let me check down here. We lent you, you've actually, how about this? Over the last 10 years, you have actually, of course, last 10 years wouldn't do much because that's just still paying on the interest. But they say, well, in equity, you've got X amount of thousands of dollars, and for $500 up front, when you want to, if we don't change our mind, we'll let you borrow. In other words, we'll let you go back just like the day you started 10 years ago and be back in debt all over for your house. Isn't that wonderful? And that's all everybody talks about now. It's almost a buzz term. It's to show that you're a yuppie and that you're up to date as well. Any day now I may exercise my line of home equity credit. No, what I'm saying is I'm going to give them back all the money. I'm going back in debt all over. I'm going back to square one. But you people know, you read the news, and you listen as much as me, the advertisements, this major breakthrough. It's like the powerful, that is, these bankers sit around for years thinking, what new can we do for the little guy now? And it's like they're kicking each other. Come on, think of something we can do to help the little guy. And somebody thinks, hey, I know, we'll take the term second mortgage and we'll call it home equity, and we'll let them go back in debt. But on the surface, at the 3D topographical level, the structures seem to continually be for the benefit of the group that is not being benefited. And it's got nothing to do with social standing, it's got nothing to do with the economy, it's got nothing to do with your background other than the genetic background of all of us being tied to life's background. It has to do with the health of life. And the health of life could not sustain itself, nor could you sustain yourself in every relationship if the exchange was done, the transfer of funds, that is energy, food, information, if the transfer benefited the lesser. Now, religions, so-called cults, philosophies of all kinds throughout the ages keep taking notice of man's so-called weaknesses. And they're decried, they're attacked from a multitude of positions, as I said, philosophical, religious, and blah, blah, blah. Even if you don't believe that you are adhering to any particular philosophy before you run across this, consider this. In man believing, and man being wired up to believe that he can operate in ways not to his own best interest, he's believing what? He is believing that he can feed the lesser of two structures in himself. He's believing that he not only can, but perhaps inevitably is going to feed what you would normally call your weaknesses. That you're going to take the powerless in you, the boobs, the fools, the idiots that will go get a home equity loan and believe that they want to go up to the banker and shake his hand, pat him on the back, and say, wish he could call him by his first name. Charles. Well, I couldn't do that. That want to thank the structure for being such that I can feed my lesser parts. There is no fully adequate 3D description of this, but me leading you through these last few minutes, you should be able to see that if it were possible, why would anybody that was even semi-sane, when all transactions, including the ones in you, your so-called thought processes, your so-called emotional life, is always transfer of funds from one account to another, from one area of your nervous system to another. If it were possible, why would anybody take good food from somebody that could benefit in you and turn around and give it to somebody who could not digest it in you, to someone to whom it would be wasted? How could you believe, how could you be wired up to believe this, once it's pointed out, once you get a glimpse of it, that you are going somewhere by going in one fund, one account over here, and you take out $1,000 And you realize there's this other account that I can put it in, and every time I do, it's only worth 500. Ooh, boy, God, can I do that again? Ooh, give me something else to drink. Let me have some more dope. Let me get mad some more. Let me dream again of gods and spirits. Let me be human. Let me be ordinary. Because when I am, and it doesn't seem to matter. I said 1,000, and I said dollars. Cosmic benchmarks. Whatever the measurement was. The 1,000's nothing. If I had access over here just momentarily, like a great thought, a great plan I had, a great decision, I'm going to do something different. Maybe I found one spot that is worth 10,000. Just think, if I move it over what I did the last time, it'll only be worth 5,000. Maybe if I'm lucky, it'll get down to, the whole bottom will drop out and it'll be worth like one cosmic benchmark. Ooh, I can hardly wait. What time does the bank open? Of course, in your case, in man's case, the bank is always open. It is not, there's no adequate 3D picture I can make of this. That's why I went through all that, to try to get you to see that. But in one sense, that's what it amounts to, is I am taking X amount of energy, goods, good feeling, good thoughts. X amount of my life is what it amounts to. Now I was calling 1,000 for once. And what you're going to do is exchange it. You're going to exchange it for something if you're having the experience of it. That's an exchange, so it's going somewhere in you. If it's apparently a solo act, you sitting at home doing something, remembering something that happened, dreaming about what you're going to do tomorrow. There's nobody else there, so the transaction, the exchange going on between the cellular bodies is in your nervous system. Somebody's going to benefit at the expense of somebody else. Why would you take from one part of your nervous system this account that's worth 1,000 something or others and put it somewhere where it immediately is then worth half? Why? We got to turn the tape over. Go ahead. Are we back on? Hello, are we back on? Are we back on? What about that good old movie about there's been several versions of some famous guy, like a preacher or a philosopher. They got famous on radio and they moved up to a television version and all the people loved him. I remember 2 versions of it, radio and TV. And then finally one day at the height of his popularity, he's smiling, and somebody in the control room, as the credits roll, and it's the end of the show, they forget to turn off his mic, and he's smiling and begins to curse and laugh at all these poor boobs that ride in and believe in him. Nobody knows that? I was going to fake it, as a thing sometime, and do something terrible like, good grief, and say something really that would put the... To new people out there that sing this tape at other times and other places, and then we suddenly go, the mic wasn't on, was it? And then them think, ha ha, now the truth is out. And of course that would show that if that ran them off, then it shows justice prevails, that they didn't think, wait a minute, he put the damn things out, he could have cut that out. But nah, people in the city don't. Once people in the city catch on, once people in the city catch on once, they can't catch on twice in the same thing. Well, think about it. People in the city say, nah, I was through once. I came to 2 or 3 of these tapes, and I thought maybe there's something here, until that day that he was turning the tape over, they were fooling the equipment, and he began to talk about what a bunch of idiots that people would come to listen to this. And then he went, oh, and the tape wasn't, you can't tell me anything else. Nah, we called on. Nobody thinks so. How in the world did life get me? How did he let me catch on? Consider that all of no consequence, right? Since I've already used up half the tape on the first sentence, I think I'll leave tonight for that part. But to stress to you, there's always, I brought it up for a very particular reason, and this last couple of weeks of me going back to apparent political and economic paradigms, or at least allegorical paradigms, if not metaphorical and burlesque paradigms, that there is a purpose. But I am telling you, this is one of the things you could write down. None of you are doing it, but if you want to start compiling your own books of brand new, unrecognized 4-dimensional laws of physics, that I've been putting out. That is one, that all relationships between any individuals, if you're talking about cellular bodies that are alive, and I could even push it further, but even on that basis, then all relationships are an exchange. It's an exchange, I call it energy, but energy includes everything from the food, the flesh of the gazelle into the stomach of the tiger, to nowadays of real importance, data, information is energy. Human emotion is energy. Smiles are energy, frowns are energy. If there's an exchange going on, somebody is feeding at the expense of the other. There is no such thing of any consequence as an even exchange. There is not. So one of the parties is going to benefit, is going to feed at the expense of the other one. And it is always the stronger, except you don't know what stronger means, and there is no word. I'm not hiding it from you. I'm just telling you that all those words are flawed. The more complex, the more dominant, the more powerful. But I can tell you this, as far as it coming from a general genetic pool, it's going to be the minority. It's going to be that small amount that is the most dominant in the human drama. Such as my getting your last going of me talking about the little group of greedy bankers. There's no such thing as a group of greedy bankers. There are people that if you were going to equate, which is not the ultimate, but if we're going to equate for a second, surplus money, great amounts of surplus money, then in that regard, speaking economically, then there is a small group of people throughout history and throughout the world, throughout life's body as manifested in humans, a small group that has most of the money. Now, I'm sure that doesn't come as a big surprise to you. You don't ever read the paper. Throughout history, right now, 2 or 3 little percent got most of the wealth. Always has been that way. So if we're looking on that basis, it is this, as I was using examples, that MARTA, rapid transit, in all cities is not for the benefit of the poor people. It's for the benefit of the rich people. Unions are not for the benefit of the powerless workers against the all-powerful capitalists and owners. Nay, nay, just the opposite. What I was going to leave you with this one area is this goes on in you continually, individually, and it goes on externally in very small situations between you and your lover, your family. Then it goes on up here in your imagination at the ordinary level of your nervous system, imagining the stories you hear about conflicts in Ireland, in Israel, between the East and the West, over what would seem to be a gigantic panorama of history unfolding. The very things that you see as structures, the great one, I guess, being the ultimate for most people, is a great battle between good and evil. And we're not saying it by any means that you have any correct perception. But between that exchange, whoever's the dominant is eating off the other one. Of course, these great so-called religious apologists have never been able to explain. They even try. Up until today, somebody's writing a book trying to explain why there is evil in the world. See, that's just their term. But if they are indeed correct, what they're calling evil, why is it that evil keeps triumphing over us good people? Then what they're calling evil, I can answer the question. They can't. It's because it's stronger. It needs more food. Don't write me, you new people, that I'm saying evil's taking over. They don't know what they're talking about. What they're calling evil, if indeed they're correct in some small observation that evil is just about to run rampant over us good folks. And why is that? Why does God allow it? What they're asking is, why does life allow the strong parts of itself to eat? So it will live. Why are you wired up, all of you, that in general, the middle class, the so-called heart of life, the mindless people that keep life going, all of us little worker ants in the external sense, why is it that to varying degrees, no matter what you talk about, you at least feed your better parts enough that you make it through about 65 years old? And that you seem to be reasonably sane, you seem to be acceptably emotionally balanced, and you procreate, I'll use city terms, you love a little bit, you hate a little bit, you push people a little bit over here, and they push you back a little over here, and you get a little drunk, then you get a little hungover, then you get a little more charitable, and then you get a little more tight-fisted, then you get a little more religious, then you back off, and you get a little older, and you begin to get religious again. But in the midst of all that, if you could see the structure in you, and the structure apparently between you and certain other individuals and certain other institutions out there, you would see that in a sense that you can't realize at the ordinary level, the more complex parts, the more necessary parts are always being fed. And yet man believes it can be otherwise, such as he believes, he feels that evil is nipping at our heels. Destruction is around the corner. And they can't even realize, well-educated people, it's just like their mind goes blank, that Jesus, Holy Mother Christ, why do I feel this way when I look back and hear so-and-so, Athens, circa 300 BC, and Jesus, I didn't realize it, I stole that line. I stole that whole paragraph. That guy wrote the same thing. Then somebody wrote it in 400 AD, then 1250. And you holler out, the world's coming to an end. You don't even have to dress up like Chicken Little. You just holler it, and you'll be surrounded by people saying, I know it, lead us, lead us. Of course, all they want is somebody to keep talking about the world's coming to an end. That's their kind of leadership. They believe that this is reality. That is what I was trying to get you to see. If you followed this fast enough, this is a long wrap-up for one sentence. They believe that the lesser parts, the more unnecessary parts, the weaker parts, the more destructive parts, can be fed at the expense of the more necessary, the healthier, the more complex parts, and it can't. And yet the nervous system hears it stated that the weaker parts are going to get fed. They're going to become the stronger parts and eat us up. Of course, if they do become the stronger parts, I'm still right. Remember that. Because then they're the stronger. So, don't come to me and want me to guarantee something else. But the way it is now, from the way that ordinary consciousness would look at it, it is not possible for energy to flow downhill. If it does, it's death. Literally. Death of those involved, widespread enough, would be death to life, death to humans. I want to grab something else I was talking about last time. Remember, I was trying to get you to see that I was using bureaucracy in a particular way. There apparently always being this kind of strict division, these absolutely clear contours, meaningful contours, all-inclusive contours, such as between the powerful and the powerless, between the money-grabbing rich and us poor, hard-working, in-debt, everyday folks, all of that. Between the government, which most people take as being the real power, the government and me. As between apparently the upper and lower classes, I point out that life has come up with this real illusion in the city of a middle class, and parallel to that in a certain way, in the apparent struggle, the apparent dance between the people and their governing bodies, there comes this bureaucracy. And it operates as a kind of buffer. It operates as a kind of cushion. And it, in part, which I'm not going into any more than I did last time, in part, it begins to give a kind of illusion in certain binary situations that there is a third possibility. And I ask you the great question last time, if you recall, of do you not find that curious once you begin to see it? And is it, as a matter of fact, part of the job of all these binary situations in the city that they apparently are seeking the appearance of a third area to which one of them can apparently point, or that human consciousness can apparently look and go, well, hey, it's not a binary situation, although I know that they don't use these terms. But that it is not simply the powerless and the powerful. There's a chance I can pull myself up. I'll never be a Rockefeller, but by God, I can quit being part of the lower class. I can pull myself up to the middle class and be somebody, when in a sense is an illusion. The bureaucracy, in a sense, is an illusion. It is like there is some way I can get my hands on my king, on my regent, on my president, but I can get to the bureaucracy. The one thing that I wanted to lay on just a few more minutes, a little stronger from last time. You recall I got all of you to laugh again, and it wasn't an attack, and it wasn't a joke, but laughing about how probably the most common description of bureaucracy that most people would agree to in the city is a place where you can't get any satisfaction. It's a place where everybody says, hey, I'm not responsible. Call so-and-so. The bureaucracy, I want to be a little specific verbally, is the ultimate place where responsibility gets infinitely shifted. Infinitely. There is no end to it. None. You cannot pin down, now you know by now, I'm not talking about now out here in the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and the Social Security. I'm talking about something else. It's in you, but it's in the structure. It is in these structures that make up human relationships, human institutions. In that is this thing that's a bureaucracy, although it's not called that normally. But in that is a place that is an infinite hall of mirrors. It is the ultimate place that all responsibility is shifted. There is never, of course in the 3D world it's impossible, there is never the last desk. Because in a bureaucracy, everybody says, wait, yeah, I hear what you're asking, but that's not my problem. They hand it over here to the next guy. And you move over there, as it were. They say, no, yeah, oh yeah, I see what it is, but here. All right, you would think, if we were talking about now back to Washington or back to Sacramento or Albany or New York or Tallahassee, you would think, all right, eventually, if I had the time and the energy and I was tracking down something inside the bureaucracy, I would finally get to somebody. You know, they can only shift these papers so far and keep giving me numbers. They go see this guy. Finally, I get somebody to say, okay, you got me. I'm in charge. And all right, you're wrong. If you did find such a place out here, I'm telling you, the bureaucracy broke down. They wouldn't know how to define it, but the bureaucracy would not be serving the right purpose. If that happened to you internally, one of two things would have happened in the city. One is you would have gone insane by city standards. The second one is you're about to die. You got just a few seconds. When you can get to a place that somebody finally says, at the city level, they finally say, oh, okay, you got me. Yeah, this is a place. What that means is you're crazy. You're going to wake up, assuming you get conscious again in the ordinary sense. Someday in the future, you're going to wake up and you're going to be in a padded cell. And they're going to have some kind of story. It could be 7 years later, 12 years later, that something just snapped in you. That's one possibility. The other one is, if you get to a place and the guy looks, and they've been shuffling all these years, and you finally, as you were sure was true in the 3D world, in the city, they can't do this forever, damn it. I'll finally get to the place that they have shuffled the papers to every damn desk in this city, in this bureau. And finally it's going to get to the one desk that's been everywhere else, and it's going to get to the guy and he's going to say, well, you got me. You know, this is it. I can't shift it off. All right, the other possibility, if you're not going crazy, you know what you found? He's going to, as they would in a movie, I guess, he's going to pull off a face and he's going to be the big GR. The grinning reaper. I mean the grim reaper. That, yeah, you got me. You got to the final desk and it's going to be, you're that close away from death. Because the bureaucracy, that is the structure now, we're not talking about any of the bureaus of government. We're talking about the bureaucracy now in life and in you. The purpose of the bureaucracy is to serve as this supreme place where all responsibility is shuffled through infinity. There is no end of shuffling the responsibility. None. There can't be an end to it. At the 3D level, I've given you two possibilities. Death would seem to be it. The other one could be from a conscious way with those involved. It's meaningless, of course. But it could be that you cease to be part of the bureaucracy. That is, you cease to be part of the middle class. You now became a small-time player in this drama known as a nutcase. All of your shingles became unglued at one time. I guess this, at least me doing this these 3 nights a week is written now, if anybody can see it, this is nothing about me now. But this is a form of in a complete other dimension of there is no final desk. Because I was about to say some comment, at least to myself, which I might as well say it to you, about the things that come to me for a while that I'll, until further notice, until I decide that I'll talk about along the lines of government. Without even trying, whatever that means, without me preparing. It's just the things that I believe and I can feel as a kind of exchange. I guess you'd call it feedback, but the kind of exchange I can tell when something is happening, that enough of you are getting something for me to continue it, and then when to stop it. But in any particular area like this about government, if I were to talk, what would be reasonable? 12, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, I couldn't catch up to what I'd like to tell you tonight, see, is the point. And that's why just suddenly, and that's one of the reasons, maybe next Monday, next Wednesday, I'll suddenly be talking about sports. It might be another 2 or 3 years, if ever, that I ever seem to talk about all of this again, that some of it sounded so juicy to some of you, and that there must be more. I just told you so much more that if I talk 16 hours a day from now on, I couldn't catch up to what I'd like to say tonight. I mean, what's right here? I hate to try and describe it. The front burner. What I could just tell you right quick tonight, assuming right quick was like 16 hours a day for the next 10 weeks, I'll put into the next 30 minutes, which I can do. You just can't hear it that fast. Another 2 or 3 years, if ever, that I ever seem to talk about all of this again, that some of it sounded so juicy to some of you, and that there must be more. I just told you so much more that if I talk 16 hours a day from now on, I couldn't catch up to what I'd like to say tonight. I mean, what's right here? I hate to try and describe it. The front burner. What I could just tell you right quick tonight, assuming right quick was like 16 hours a day for the next 10 weeks, I'll put into the next 30 minutes, which I can do. You just can't hear it that fast. Having said that, that was on the basis of me sitting here editing myself about how much I was going to try and say tonight, and if I didn't say it, how much longer I was going to go on this line, and all this good stuff. It'd be good stuff to some of you that I'm going to have to throw away. But here we go. Here's another one. The Constitution. Not the Constitution of this state, but the, or a Constitution with a small c. We're still talking about governments, and I'm still starting from apparently out here. No matter what form of government you apparently were under, out there, in here. Remember that? That you apparently, there is some kind of ruler. There is the appearance in all the middle class that inside of me is a king or a queen. There's a region of some kind, because every time somebody hollers, "Hey, Hubert," I go, "Yeah." There seems to be that. And sometimes, just use my kind of description, sometimes it may appear to be a rather benevolent monarch, and other times it seems to be an almost despicable, intolerant tyrant. Or at times, I even seem to be, I guess you could say, some type of oligarchy. That there seems to be 2 or 3 of me. I don't mean it's psychotic enough to pass off for multiple personalities, but I don't have that real clear-cut feeling of me being a real stable, always on the throne, queen or king. Yeah, I answer when they holler Hubert or Mary Ann, I turn around. But I almost feel like at times or periods that I'm an oligarchy. It's the rule of a few people in me. I'm not all that sure. I'm still looking for myself, which is a great hobby at the age of 50. I love that. Well, of course, it's an even worse hobby at the age of 15 because you don't know what the hell you're looking for. Besides sex. Constitution, no matter what government you're apparently under, and this holds true out there, as always, in a particular way that's never been recognized, all of these cellular creatures are seeking a kind of constitution. Even those living under dictatorships, one-man rule, monarchies. Those of you who are, it's not a political science lesson, but I'm using this all in the small letters, I guess, or the capital letters. A constitution is not what is called the United States. I don't mean that. That has to be a capital C. It is not some kind of spelling out of freedom from a monarch, like the United States' revolution and cut off of their colonial status from the great, wonderful King George that everybody loved. And it's not that kind of constitution. Constitution is this, in the small letter, which has always been true, people living under tyrannical rules. The rulers would always be open to a constitution. It could have been called something else, but what it amounts to is this. It is a structure between 2 groups. And there is built into the human nervous system, whether it comes out on the individual level, larger level, like whole countries, whole nations, races of people. There's still cellular bodies, and here's what it is. It is a built-in searching. It is a longing for what amounts to, apparently, a yellow circuit, verbally based set of guidelines that the powerless feel will give them a predictable notion of how they're going to be dominated. I finally got that out. That was a long one. You got to admit, when I give new definitions, I give them. It is this. And it is not, for those of you, this is historically true. This is not simply a group of the powerless rebelling against some intolerable king. He may be intolerable, he may be a hothead, but there's always been, if this line of power at any time in history stays long enough, even though whatever the king says is law, there's always, if there's one king, and let's say he's just a tyrant, when he takes over, however he got there, through heredity or whether it was a change in that line of genetic power in life's body, that the revolution did take place and this whole new family takes over. In other words, he can be bloody, ruthless, unpredictable. But if he stays there, he or some of his heirs for a while, long enough that apparently this is the power structure there for a while. If he stays long enough, the structure between him and the powerless, the people he's abusing and killing, there begins to be within this crystalline, organic growth, this structure between the two. There's a relationship. Now you could look back historically, this is done all the time. That historically, let's say, well, this one group of people got so mistreated by this king that he just almost decimated the whole race of people. He almost killed them all. They hated him. Everybody, little children drew pictures on his face and would put it at the bottom of the outhouses and their latrines. Everybody hated the man. That doesn't matter. They can say that in history. If he stayed there, there was a relationship. They were dancing. There was a structure between the two. And for you to say that they hated him, that's meaningless. They danced with him. You can't say, well, they couldn't have loved him. That's right, I won't say that. But you should, again, be up to the point topographically to realize something is wrong here. Something is wrong with ordinary consciousness. All right, if we're actually talking about out here, we could be talking about something else, but apparently I'll talk about out here. If that person is going to stay in power, there begins to grow within this relationship a kind of rumbling. It is an organic searching and longing for a constitution. But what it is an apparent yellow circuit based, or you could put slash verbally based, guidelines by which the powerless seem able to safely or comfortably predict how they're going to be dominated. And the king will finally, to varying degrees, if he stays there long enough in this relationship, as the structure goes on, he'll begin to submit to it. Now, it's not always written down. It becomes custom. The basis of those of you who like a little quick, if you can follow this, it's not all that arcane. The American judicial system, if you ever hear it discussed, is often referred to that its origins was the Old English common law, which was unwritten. It was a basis of custom. That much of what England did, the kinds of freedom from their kind of tyrannies, the kind of civilizing effect in England and Europe, Western Europe, from the Middle Ages on, was not necessarily written, although there were documents, but it got to the point that the liege, even if he was a tyrant and a madman apparently, there got to be this kind of yellow circuit, that is, or verbally based, that even the least powerful, the scum of the earth, the poorest, most impotent peasant, serf, if he had any knowledge of what was going on in his area, there was finally a longing for a constitution, and there began to be the feel that there was some sort of guidelines by which I could predict how I'm going to be dominated. I could go on with this, but you either got some hold of this or you don't, I assume, by now. So now let me try to get closer to the punchline. Can you see that this, and this is another physical law of physics, whether you were able to consume my verbal description tonight, there is this longing, and there will be, to some degree, a resulting existence of a kind of constitution. It's a kind of predictable set of guidelines that will apparently let the powerless have some notion of how they're going to be kicked around. I mean, dominated. Even if the guidelines are that the king, the beginning might be that the king is the king. And whatever he decides to do, he's going to do, and there ain't no appeal. All right, at least they got a starting place. Well, wouldn't you feel better if you had grown up and there you were, and you didn't know. I mean, you looked around and the king was killing about every other person every other week. He'd just come riding through with people and he'd just throw his cigarette and his cigar over there and burn up somebody's house. Or he'd just drive by and look at you and your children, pull out his sword and hit you. That's the way people lived under many times, many conditions. Of course, I don't know why you think that's so strange. What if you knew what was going on? Think what you do to some of your poor little cells. But of course you'd say, well, hey, I'm not responsible. Yeah, spare me the details, all right? It just shows that you're a king and you don't know what the hell is going on. What kind of king you are. At any rate, if finally there just got to be the kind of verbal understanding there in the villages, that it sort of, maybe even finally some low bureaucrat or some bureaucrat finally comes out and he says, well, the king, to keep the public good and to keep some order here, wanted me to come and announce to all you people. Can all you people understand the human language? Most of them, he says, all right, look, he's the king. You know who I'm talking about? The guy with the cigars and he kills a lot of people? And they go, yeah. All right. Anytime he wants to burn your house or to kill your children or to take your wife, he's the king. And the king can do things like that. You know what I'm talking about? And they go, oh, yeah. The king can do that. Okay. All right. And so anytime he wants to, he's going to do it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, truthfully, I made you laugh a few minutes ago. It wasn't a joke. But in the human nervous system, that kind of sound waves to the nervous system, to a certain degree, the people, many of them would go, well, now I feel better. If the king hadn't changed, and let's assume that for a while things going just like they were. He comes by and burns your house, takes your wife, kills your children. But now it has been explained. There's the beginning of a constitution. There's the beginning of guidelines. At least, all right, you may get your house burned and your wife taken and your children killed. But at least you don't have your house burned, your wife taken, and your children killed, and then you wonder, can something be done? At least one of those problems are gone, because now you know nothing can be done. That's the king, and he can do it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So at least one of those are gone, like, well, that's a load off my mind. Now you got to do is worry about him burying your house, taking your wife, and killing your children. But you don't have to go around wondering, you know, where's the justice of this? What can I do? There is no justice, and there's nothing you can do. All right, good. That would be like the opening sentence of their Constitution. But then it slowly, this is not just a joke, it slowly grows. This organic, this crystalline, invisible growth between the powerful, in this case, let's say one man, the king, and the people. And then it gets more complex. It begins to apparently give them more guidelines. Maybe the guy gets a little older and they come around and announce, by the way, the king is still the king. Remember that? And I'll go, yeah. And you know, there's nothing you can do about anything he does. Remember that? And I go, oh yeah, we know that. They say, all right, the king has decided, you know, he still may come by and burn your house and he may kill your children, but he's decided he's going to quit taking your women. And of course it could be because the guy's reaching so old he's become impotent. So big deal. Of course, the people, they might go, well, that's another load off my mind. So now, as long as this old man no longer is interested in sex, at least he's not going to take our women. So then, this Constitution, this kind of apparent, predictable guidelines by which I'm going to be dominated, has become more complex. Can you see that in the relationships, that is, the structures of everything from religion, all political and economic systems and theories, all rituals, all social and moral mores, all cultural fixations, all amount of custom, is all a reflection of this kind of very non-verbal, is the way it starts, because nobody's ever explained it. Again, as always, you heard it here first. I don't mean just in Georgia, America. I'm talking about on the planet. It's never been named. But it is this, what I'm talking about, the reality behind me describing a structure has any lifespan at all. Then those involved, which is really the structure itself, begins to long for and begins to seek a kind of constitution, a kind of apparent yellow circuit-based or verbal basis by which the less powerful in this structure relationship between two people, between two cellular bodies, whether it be all of us, the people, and then this mad king, they begin to long and seek for, and eventually begin to grow in this structure, a kind of constitution. In times, from certain views, you could say it begins to limit the power of the king. That's the way it apparently comes out. But it is still for the benefit, not of the people. That's the way it would seem again. Well, boy, this makes us feel better. It's not. It's for the benefit of the more powerful. It's for the benefit of the king, because it makes the lesser people accept it more readily. This can't be seen in the actual workings, the organic workings of history, but whenever a king, one ruler, begins to apparently relinquish some of his tyrannical powers, that is, ease up. If you could see it, it's telling you one thing. It's telling you that their dance is getting strained. As always in the city, ordinary consciousness is talking around the edges of it. They can say, well, dictator so-and-so in country so-and-so has decided to let some of the people, there's been a sort of a tacit acceptance of a black market flourishing here. But the economy is getting so bad and the people are getting so restless, now he's saying that he's decided that the country in his reign is old enough that he can ground a certain amount of economic tolerance and some free enterprise. And some of these social observers, political observers say, well, all he's trying to do is to keep a revolution from happening. Well, they're telling the truth. They're stating the obvious, but they only got 2/3 of it. That none of it's happening because of, it's not happening because of the restlessness of the people, the weariness of their economic straits. It's not happening because of the fear of the tyrant that they are going to revolt. It's happening because life is growing and it begins to bust out. And you have to buy new jeans when you get older. If you put on any more weight, you got to let your belt out or buy a new one. You pop the buttons off your shirt. A dance between two people, the structure between two people begins to strain. And the two people can be a king, a tyrant, and a whole millions of people. The powerless in that one man. And then he apparently, looked at from the 3D level, begins to grant certain concessions for their benefit. Right? Wrong. It's to keep the structure together. Looked at another way, it's to keep him in power. The king does not go out and say, well, I've decided I'm going to let you people, I know you've been working 18 hours a day and give me all your money 7 days a week. I've decided that on the 7th day you only have to work 6 hours. And they all go, yay, what a king, what a king. You know, and he smiles and he takes the credit. It's not for their benefit. It's for his benefit, if you could see it. Something was happening. The dance was getting strained. The structure was getting strained. He don't know why it happened. I'm not trying to infer at all that he has any awareness of it, but it's just like it sort of happened. Over a period of time, it's just like it sort of happened that is the bureaucracy began to tell him, sire, a lot of people are really getting restless. You know, go kill 50,000 more again. So they do that for a while, a decade or so. And then finally they tell him over and over, it's not working. You know, so then he says, all right, really? You really killed 50,000 in the last couple of weeks, yeah? And it's not working, really? Are you telling me the truth? You've been here a long time, yeah? What should we do? Throw them a bone of some kind. Do something for their benefit. None of them, the people involved, understand it, because it is not for their benefit. It's for the benefit of the powerful to stay in power. That's it. That's the only reason there are unions. That's the only reason there's consumer credit. That's the only reason there is the city. Everything that you've ever attempted to do at the ordinary level, from reading books to trying to follow some philosophy, by imagining that you were going to follow some philosophy, it was an attempt for you to have the feeling that there were some guidelines that you could adopt that would help predict, sort of, the kind of dominance to which you're going to have to submit from now on, always have been, but that if you had some sort of notion that, hey, I wonder if I converted and became a Catholic, if life would make more sense. Now, of course, they don't use terms that mundane, those that seriously believe in conversion or consider it. But it's like the feeling, would my life be better if I became a Catholic? What they're asking, without knowing it. That part in man's nervous system that life produces and runs certain energies through, it's on the basis of, would there be a greater feeling on my part of the predictability of this very uncertain life? The force is kicking me around. The unseen king that's pushing us all around, that some people, of course, believe is a God somewhere outside the system. If I became a Catholic, would that establish a kind of constitution between me and the gods, or between me and these forces, between me and bad luck, between me and death? Would there be a kind of constitution if I do if I really join in, I do go through all that crap, and convert and do the study and do everything and take up the diet. If I do all that, well, that establish a kind of constitution between me and the powers that run me and that run life. It's an admission, not people knowing it as if life needed it, but as a kind of unrecognized admission that I am powerless. Something is powerful. Something is running this whole show, whatever it was called. If I could just find some kind of constitution, if somewhere, like verbally at the very least, somebody, some source, some other cellular being would say, all right, here's the deal. And they offer you a deal. They offer you a constitution. All right, you become a blank. You become a Catholic, and here's what we'll do. When you die, if you're a good Catholic, when you died, then you won't really be dead, and you'll be in a real neat place. It seems to be a guideline. Or in some of the other religions, that's all right. You become a blank, and or cults and philosophies, just all sorts. That all right, you become and join one of us. And here's the deal. Here's the constitution between. I'm a bureaucrat, says this yogi, this guru. What he's saying is, I'm a bureaucrat, and I'm closer to the power than you are. Of course, all of his followers, all ordinary people, they know, well, I'm nowhere close because I don't even know what the fuck the power is. And so this one guy steps in and he says, all right. And what he's saying is, I'm a bureaucrat. And of course, it comes out with them saying, I'm the first cousin of God. God sent me. I'm not really a human. I'm from the power source. But at the very least, the tacit structure between the people and this guy, this teacher, this rabbi, this prophet, is that I am a bureaucrat. I may not be the God. I may not be the ultimate power, but I am the intermediary between you, the powerless, and the powerful. So I am authorized to strike a deal with you. That is, I am authorized to give you a constitution. You join up with us, and right now life is unbearable. I mean, life's a pain in the ass for you, right? And you go, yeah. Okay, you join up with us and do whatever is required. You'll give me half your money, send over every other child to us or whatever. Do that, and the contract, the constitution that I'm qualified to speak for between the powerful and you is this. Life won't be such a pain in the ass. That is what people are seeking in religion, not knowing it. That's what they're seeking, just to pick up a book that says how to live fully 365 days a year. How to be a happier person. How to be a better wife. How to fulfill your role in parenting. Ordinary words of wisdom. Axioms. They're all an attempt. It is a longing for a constitution between the powerless, which is you, anybody seeking any of that. It's the longing for, the search for a constitution. At least one line, like, all right, the king will no longer take your women. He'll just burn your house and kill your children if he wants to. It is just at least one line. That's all you'll settle for that. That it's a one-line bargain, a one-line constitution that somebody seems authorized to offer you between you, the powerless, and the ultimate power, whatever it is. That's what life is about in the city. And it comes out not only in religion, which is the obvious one for me to bring out, but in the beliefs in political system, socialism, communism, democracy, economic theories of a free market, supply-side economics, a controlled economy, a laissez-faire economy, a half-and-half socialist capitalist system, a true free market system. All of that, they're apparently talking about politics, they're apparently talking about economics. They're talking about one thing. It's the people involved in their structure between them being powerless and the powerful. They're wanting at least a one-sentence constitution to issue for somebody to tell me from the ultimate power, this king, this tyrannical, this one-man rule, that is, I can't even get close. I don't know what it is. I don't even know what to call it. My parents called it God. My crazy aunt that fools around with crystals and tarot cards, she calls it cosmic forces. All I know is I don't have any power. All I know is I'm going to die, and I don't want to die. All I know is I'm afraid, and I don't want to be afraid. All I know is life's a pain in the ass, and blah, blah, blah. All I want is one line of a constitution for somebody to say, all right, here's the deal. Follow us, and the king won't take your women anymore. Or he won't burn your house on Sunday. On Sunday, the king's agreed he won't even smoke a cigar, and if he does, he won't come out of the castle. That's all people want. They'll take it. You're supposed to take it. It's not stupidity. But that's what all economic, political theories, all religions are about. It's what all social customs, the rituals of a group of people, of a race, of a nation. It's what their mores are. They call it their moralities. They're things we will do. We won't spit on Sunday. I won't ride in the car on Saturday. I won't eat tacos on Wednesday. And all that, and they attribute it that it's some sort of, it came down from eons ago. It was our bargain with the gods. The gods told our great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather that you people, if you're going to stay on the good side of us, the gods, don't ever eat tacos on Tuesday. That's easy, for you to laugh or for me to say something like that. But then it becomes what seems to be a real ritual, whether it be called religious or not, and people want to faithfully follow it. And if you're not part of that ritual, you can certainly laugh and go, ha, ha, ha. But why do they do it? Are they all idiots? It seems to be one basis, one line of a constitution, as silly as it seems to an outsider, that the God said, all right, don't eat tacos on Wednesday. From now on, never. And blah, blah, blah. Whatever it seems to be to those people. You will live in peace. Or if your neighbors want to overrun you, it will only be temporary. You will always survive. You will eventually persevere because us, the gods, are on your side if you won't eat tacos. If you'll all do so-and-so, and you'll worship me twice a year. It's a seeking of a constitution to apparently give some predictable guidelines by which the powerless can expect to be kicked around. I know I've said that twice. It was to get your attention and try to get you to look further. For the powerless to have the feeling that they can predictably, or feel that they have some predictability to the way in which they're dominated. That's what you're looking for. People look to their father to do it. Then you had people like Freud and Jung got carried away with psychology, the invention of the unconscious mind, or the discovery of it, which was the rediscovery of Greek and Roman mythology. And the idea of father complexes and etc. It's the same thing I'm describing to you, but it's a molecular, it is a biological basis. Well, we're out of audio tape. Well, I got to about the second sentence I generally had in mind tonight, so we're going to stop. I had excursions, I had epilogues, I had all kinds of stuff. But thanks to you and time, don't take it personally. Go home and get a good night's sleep. Don't forget exercise and the numbers, eat beans, and check out good oatmeal cookies.